from Lilibelle Lane Creations, and welcome to month 10 of the Galaxy Block of the Month. So let's dive straight in. What are we doing this month? Okay, to start with, we are making the 2.5 blocks as per your BOM postcard that's in with your fabrics this month. So talking of fabrics, let's have a quick look at the fabrics we're playing with this month. So to start with, we have our feature print that we're fussy cutting this month. So this is the Who's Your Dandy print in the Glow colorway. Then our 2 tiny stripes we're playing with. This one is Moon Garden. This one is Sunrise. And then our tiny dots, we're playing with Peacock, and we're playing with Candy. Also in your BOM fabric pack this month, you would have got your black and white fabrics, and we will be carrying over our spots from last month. And don't forget, in addition to our 2.5 blocks, we're making 4 of our pieced hexagon blocks. So let's take a look at the feature fabric we're playing with this month. So you should have a fat quarter of fabrics. Let's move these out of the way. Oops. You'll have a fat quarter of fabric in your feature print this month. As you can see, the repeat on this fabric is really easy to read. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across the width of fabric on my fat quarter, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again across the width of my fat quarter here. So obviously where yours is cut from the bolt, your start end piece will be slightly different, but you should have approximately the same. Don't stress if you've got hedgehogs too close to the end, because you have more than enough in the other width of your fabric to get what's required to make these blocks this month. So if we go back to our postcard for this month, let's have a look at our first block we're making. So we're using this hedgehog just here to make this first block. So if you look closely at your postcard, you will see that we have the green or the teal color of the hedgehog's base is going to be swirling out from the center of our block. So let's take a look on our fabric. Let me zoom you in a little bit as to what we're looking at to cut this fussy cut center. So we had the green that's coming from the center of our block out. So we'll be looking at putting the dot on the end of your template on the very end of the green bit of the hedgehog's body, and then we're looking at coming across towards the hedgehog in front of him. So I'm going to flip it over. I've already traced my fussy cuts on the back of my fabric to make it nice and easy for you to see. Let's make sure we've got him. So obviously we've flipped the fabric, so the print's now in reverse and he's facing out this way. So take your template. I always like to place my template with the etch lines down. If you run your fingers over, you'll feel which side's etched and which isn't. I like to place the etch line down so that it goes right up against my fabric and I can see exactly what it's going to look like when I'm done. So like I said before, what I'm doing, the circle at the end of my template, I want on the end of the blue bit of my hedgehog. So I'm placing him on the end, and then I'm going up. Now what I'm looking at when you do this yourself, you'll see there's a little flower up here. I've centered that flower in the other end of my template. So when you're marking your templates on the back of your fabric, get your retractable pencil, mark your dots. This will help you with the placement of your EPP papers later on, and trace around. Now obviously this is done over a sandpaper board, which I haven't grabbed to bring with me to show you at the moment, but the reason we use the sandpaper board, because it stops the fabric from slipping and sliding. So we go and do that 6 times. So as you will see, I've got, I'll zoom you back out. Oops, out. Haven't done this for a couple of months. I'm out of sorts. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I've gone down 5, 6. So that's my 6, and I've still got a few repeats left. The other one that we are doing for this month, if we take a look at this second one, we're using the other hedgehog, and we're creating a pink center with flowers around it. So we need to go find this hedgehog, which is our other repeat like I just said, and we need to position our template. So this is the hedgehog we're using. So flip your fabric over. And I will zoom you back in. Okay, move my fabric down so you can see. This is the hedgehog that we're playing, and I've got it over the back of my fabric. I've got the edge line of my template facing down. I've put it over, so bottom of the hedgehog, you'll see there's a flower, and under the flower there's like a pink leaf. So what I'm doing is putting the whole of my template at the bottom of that pink leaf. When you put your template over, you will see that you are creating a pink center, and then you're going to have your flowers. Now you're not going to have all of your flower because we want to concentrate more on the hedgehog. So we place it straight up, and again, for reference, at the top of my template, move it down a little bit. Can you see that I'm using another one of those little flowers? So I'm centering it at the top. Now by using these two reference points, top and bottom, will allow me to cut all my 6 pieces from the same element of the fabric. Line them up. They'll be as close to physically possible as being cut the same. That'll give me that rotating effect. So again, on your sandpaper board, which pretend I've got underneath, mark your holes and then trace your template. Do that for all 6. So if I zoom you back out, oh, I got it right this time. Look at me go. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I come down here and I've got 6. So our next one is our half block. Now half block you can take, it doesn't have to be cut exactly the same. You can take it from anywhere you want. Now I know a lot of people think that fussy cutting is a waste of fabric. My dogs are going silly outside, sorry about that. Where was I? Yes, fussy cutting. A lot of people can think that it can be a waste of fabric because you have all these gaps in between where you've traced. Use this half block to go back into these gaps and cut your 3 pieces. So we can see here, if I put my template up here, I can easily, oh, actually, I might run with that one. If I zoom you in a little bit, can you get you out of the light? Can you see how between this second one that we fussy cut at the top of my fat quarter, my template will fit nicely there, and I'm going to get these 2 flowers and I'm going to get this flower up here. So let me flip it over and show you what I can get. So from my scraps, I can get something like that for my half block. So that's what I'm going to run with. I've looked at the edge of my fat quarter, and I'm going to run with cutting my 3 bits of my edge block from, oh, let's move that light over, from there. So I'm just going to look, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so what I'm going to do down here, just notice there's a little flower. So I'm going to put the whole of my template over that flower. I'm going to line my template against my drawn line of this hedgehog, which also matches with the drawn line from the next hedgehog. I'm going to mark my dots, and I'm going to trace the missing lines. And I should be doing this on a sandpaper board so it grips my fabric. So when I come to my next one, I've got my reference hole down here. Reference hole. I've got my reference flower. So I'm going to put my dot over that flower. It's going to align with those. I'm going to mark again. Remember, we mark the holes in our template so it makes it easy for us to place our papers later on. Now, I am cutting into the very edge, the selvage of this fabric, but that's not going to matter because it's not going to show on the finished piece that's wrapped around my paper. It's actually going, these dots from the selvage are going to be my seam allowance of my piece. So I'm not worried about that, and I'm making great use of the fabric that was at the top. Now, where am I? My flower. I've got my flower. Tiny little yellow flower. I'm lining him there and there. Super easy. Mark my dots. Trace my pieces. Okay. So now I've traced my 6, each of my 2 fussy cuts for my full blocks. And I've traced my 3. And as you can see there, I've made good use of the fabric, and I've still got all this integrity of this fabric over here. I always when I do fussy cutting, a little tip, I always try to look at the border pieces of my fabric and try and cut from there first. That way I maintain larger pieces on the inside of my fabric that I can use later on if I want to make a bigger project. I'm not fussy cutting, or I just leave more repeats. So now it's time to go cut these out. So get yourself a pointy-ended pair of scissors. I love these Karen K. Buckley. I think these are the 6.5 inch scissors. I love them. They're really nice and sharp and great to work with. Okay, when we go, just a little refresher, when we go to cut our pieces out of our fabric, try not to cut in from the edge to your shape that you've traced. If you're cutting in from the edge of your fabric, you are potentially cutting into what could be another fussy cut at a later date. It might not be a fussy cut you're using today, but it could be a fussy cut that you're going to come back to in 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years time, and you can't use because you've cut in from the edge of your fabric. So all you do, put your hand underneath your fabric, go to your cut line, get your scissors, and simply snip in and then cut along the line. Now, I never cut my fussy cut pieces out with a rotary cutter, because if I'm going against my template, my rotary cutter, I'm always going to cut beyond my trace line. And again, that potentially will eat into the next fussy cut I want to use. So by doing it with the scissors, again, we are maintaining the integrity of the fabric that we're not using. Also a tip, if you've purchased a pattern and it has 1/4 inch seam allowance on it and you prefer 3/8, then you just cut that little bit bigger than what the 1/4 inch seam allowance on the shape you've traced. So if I wanted a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance on this, I would just cut that little bit further out from my trace line, because my templates are 1/4 inch. Okay, and then you just start cutting all your pieces out. Okay, so we finished cutting all our pieces out. Now, if you are familiar with these videos, you would know that I like to batch baste. What do I mean by batch baste? Batch basting is simple. I'm doing all my diamonds. So I make sure all my pieces are facing up the same way. I flip them over and I lay them out. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I know that's one of my blocks. And my next one, we're going to make sure they're all going the same way. 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I've got my 3 pieces for my half block. I make sure they're all sitting up the same way. Now, by doing this and having them out like this, when I baste, all my tails are going to then go the same way. So I come along and I just drop a paper on each shape. I'm not worrying about positioning at this point. I'm just putting a paper on each one. Some spare papers to the side. I get my glue stick. Remember, with a glue stick, we hold it like a pen, so we want to hold it on an angle. So you'll notice by my glue stick here, see how I'm forming a point in the middle? Can you see that? It forms a point in the middle. So as I'm working and glue basting my shapes, I rotate my pen around so that I maintain that point. We don't want to be glue basting on the flat end. The whole area of that glue pen is quite large and it's going to use a lot of glue as we baste. We don't want to use a lot of glue. We want to try and use as less as possible, but enough to maintain that it's going to stick. So using my glue pen, I pick up my paper, I position my points as per the dot references I did on my template. We swipe the glue along. We try to leave a little gap between the edge of the paper and the glue. By trying to leave that gap there, we are not putting glue where our needle's going to go through. So we're not gunking up where our needle's going to go. So across the fabric and then across the paper, and we fold it over. Remember, when you're pushing and folding over, we want nice sharp points. If we don't get nice sharp points, then it's going to create bulk when we come to joining all our pieces together, especially where our 6 points all meet each other. So you just work through and you baste all your shapes. There you go. As you can see by batch basting and what I did, my tails are all swinging the same way. So when I come to sew them together, the tails at the center at the back are all going to nest nicely together. So that's what I'm up to. As you would have noticed before, I had already pre-sewn, pre-cut and pre-sewn these babies. So I just need to team. Which one? That one went with that one. That one went with that one. And they go with my half block. So I'm going to go away and sew these. Add in my black and my whites. And I'll be back to show you my completed blocks at the end. Okay, welcome back. In what seems like a couple of seconds for you, it's been a couple of hours for me. And I have finished sewing my month 10 blocks. So here they are, all finished, neatly pressed and ready to be added to our pile. So enjoy making the blocks this month. But before I go, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. First one is our hexagon blocks. If you've not been making for each month, I suggest you start putting some time aside to play catch up, because my current pile looks like this. We've only got 2 months to go, so play catch up or you're going to have the dreaded job at the end of needing to sew all those together. Also, when it comes to the blocks we've already completed, you can start, if you haven't already, removing your papers. So you only need to leave the papers in the outermost edge of your work. As you can see by this block, I'm leaving the ones on the outermost edge and I've taken everything out in the middle. So if you haven't already, start doing that for all your blocks and we're getting quite a nice pile of blocks. Okay, I'm going to go play catch up on month 9. I think I've done month 8. Yep. Anyway, I'm going to go play catch up on month 9 and I'll see you next month. Happy stitching.